do think I need something for my hair.
No
A
kidding.
band or something. Goodness sakes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Don't start the camera.
This is like be prepared, right?
The things you never think you need, right?
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to the most beautiful part of the county. It just happens to be my district. It's even prettier when the lake is full and it's very green. So thank you all for coming. As you know, we've been in a drought for many years down here, back-to-back consecutive droughts. You can see how low Lopez Lake is right now. It's at 30% capacity. Nacimiento, also in our county, is very low at 20%, and Lake Santa Margarita at 64%. Again, back-to-back consecutive droughts have caused this. This is an area that's very conducive to growing crops, and agriculture is a very big commodity for our county, and so the lake being low is really affecting us. We actually have on our Board of Supervisors agenda for next Tuesday the possibility of declaring a drought declaration, so it's very timely that the governor is down here to visit us. So a few people that I'd like to recognize here. We have Senator Laird's office here representing us, and of course our Governor Newsom. And I'm going to turn this meeting over to our Natural Resources Secretary, Wade Crowfoot. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Supervisor Compton. I'm Wade Crowfoot, our Secretary for Natural Resources. Where we stand today in San Luis Obispo County at Lake Lopez, where reservoir conditions, reservoir supplies are 34% of capacity, is emblematic of reservoirs across our state. A second straight dry year has strained our water supplies, challenged our economy, and of course, also degraded the health of our rivers. We know that climate change is exacerbating conditions that we're facing. The U.S. Drought Monitor, which is a very helpful real-time information source maintained by the federal government, tells us that in the past week, temperatures as high as 17 degrees above average have exacerbated drought conditions across the entire American West. Accelerating evaporation from reservoirs like this, drying soils, and straining water supplies. California is, of course, no stranger to drought, and under the governor's direction since this winter, our agency and sister agencies have been monitoring conditions closely and taken evolving actions as drought conditions have changed, including, of course, to date, establishing proclamations of emergency in 41 counties. Specifically, our Drought Resilience Task Force has focused on identifying the most vulnerable, isolated rural communities and households in danger of running out of water and ensuring that emergency support is available should they need it, and closely monitoring the health of our rivers and fish and wildlife and taking appropriate actions to protect fish and wildlife as conditions dictate. The governor's made it very clear that we are monitoring drought conditions on a daily, on a weekly basis, and adapting our actions as the drought persists and intensifies. So given that recognition, I want to invite Governor Newsom to the podium to share actions that he's leading and announcing here today.
Appreciate it. Thank you to Secretary, and thank you, Supervisor, for the opportunity to catch up, to be with you today, and opportunity, obviously, to be here at this truly spectacular part of our state. Look, it goes without saying, we're here with intention and purpose, and that is to address the ongoing drought conditions in the state of California. As you may recall, in April, we initiated our first proclamation of a state of emergency related to this year's drought. We are now 2 years into a drought, having just come out of a 5-year drought that concluded just a few years ago. Arguably, we have been in drought conditions as far back as 2000, not only here in the state of California, but all throughout the west coast of the United States, some referring to the conditions in the west coast appropriately as a mega drought. These conditions are familiar to many Californians. As a consequence, we have conservation as a way of life as it relates to being more efficient and more effective in terms of our use and utilization and distribution of water resources. However, conditions are such, they continue to devolve And as a consequence, today we are doing what we had signaled was likely to happen, not only after the initiation of an April proclamation of a state of emergency, but the subsequent state of emergency that we announced in May. We are back today to sign an additional proclamation of a state of emergency, including an additional 9 counties. Total now of 50 of our 58 counties officially are now in a order that allows the ability for local water agencies as well as our state partners to be more efficient and effective in terms of moving to address issues in real time. In essence, clearing away a lot of the hurdles. This fundamental proclamation just simply allows for the capacity to do things that otherwise would be laborious and take time to move more effectively and efficiently to address conditions as they take shape in real time. So 50 counties now in total, 9 additional. As I noted a moment ago, those 9 include San Luis Obispo, Marin County, Inyo, Monterey County, Santa Barbara, Santa Clara, other counties, all north of the Tehachapis. Interestingly, we have now remaining counties primarily south of the Tehachapis, but about 42% of California's population now are in counties that will fall under the guidelines and the requirements set forth in this proclamation. There is an additional order. We are also signing today an executive order. That executive order specifically will lay out a framework to encourage voluntary water conservation efforts in the state of California. I want to underscore voluntary water conservation here in the state of California. We're hopeful that people will take that mindset that we brought into, people of the state of California will take that mindset they brought into the last drought and extend that forward with a 15% voluntary reduction, not only on residences, but industrial, commercial operations, and agricultural operations. We are encouraging people to do common sense things like reducing the amount of irrigation, the water you're doing out on your lawns, for example, reducing perhaps the time that you are in a shower, not eliminating that time, not here as nanny state. We're not trying to here be oppressive. Again, these are voluntary standards. We have laid out a list of ideas that include just taking a look at where leaks may be occurring on your property, taking the opportunity to update the efficiency of your shower heads. As an example, when you're doing a load of laundry, make sure it's a full load of laundry. It just helps with water consumption, as well as dishwasher. Make sure, or just encourage you to take a look and have a full load at your dishwasher. By the way, you do those things, you also save money. So it's an opportunity to not only save water, help us work through these drought conditions, but voluntarily, this is an opportunity to just remind you the opportunity to save money as well. SaveOurWater.com. SaveOurWater.com lays out a lot of ideas and specific strategies that we encourage you to take a look at. So again, SaveOurWater.com to learn more about how you can save money and you can help us through these challenging drought conditions. So that's the 2 orders that we're signing today: proclamation, a state of emergency, and an executive order, which are in front of me. They may be in front of all of you with this wind in a second, so I'm mindful as I sign them to do so cautiously. But I just want to highlight my appreciation to local water agencies, to local counties, and to the 40 million Californians. We again have been through these proclamations before, and we've come through them remarkably well because Californians have taken these declarative directions, these voluntary efforts to heart, and they've taken them very, very seriously. And just specific to that, I want to note that we had mandatory water conservation efforts during the last drought. Interestingly, per capita, we reduced water consumption by roughly 21% in this state between 2013 and 2016. We brought in that mindset into this drought, and this gives us an advantage over the last drought. We are currently, residential use in the state of California currently is 16% below where we were in 2013 as we go into this next drought. We also have been more effective and efficient in terms of water recycling, storage, and we have made a substantial amount of progress on groundwater strategies, from SGMA to safe drinking water commitments, consolidations of small water agencies all up and down the state. And we are committing this year, in addition to that, working with the legislature, $5.1 billion budget specific to drought. Because of California's budget surplus, the $80+ billion operating surplus that we're enjoying here in the state, we're in a position to put $5.1 billion to use that will allow us to have emergency opportunities as well as medium and long-term investments on water infrastructure all up and down the state of California. And so we are in a position that is a little bit more advantageous than the last time we went through a multi-year drought, but nonetheless, the sober reality is such that here we are again, and we will need to proceed with the lessons learned from the last drought, but with the benefits of those lessons now and the resources that we have not been afforded in the past. So with that said, I'll now move forward with the signing of these two drafts. I guess, you got one, two, all right, we're going to figure this out. I'm going to try to get this done so we're not, these are the actual proclamations, so I don't want to lose sight. We'll get them in the Secretary's hands, and of course, happy now to answer any questions.
Hi, Governor. You alluded to SGMA when you were just making your comments. Obviously, that's huge here. We have a critically overdrafted basin in Paso Robles. Our county's plan has not yet been approved. Can you talk about how your conservation efforts will have an impact on SGMA? Will they change anything, any state requirements?
They won't fundamentally change any state requirements pursuant to SGMA. That said, the application implementation of SGMA is underway, including the approval and the adjudication of the merits of these plans. They've been submitted to State Water Board. They're processing those. As you know, recently they have not approved others. And so we are committed to the cause of doing more to advance the implementation and the application of those rules. It's a long overdue in the state of California. I applaud the previous administration, legislature as well, for their foresight in advancing that cause. But nonetheless, this is a fundamental challenge in the state, because invariably when we put out these edicts, when the State Water Board comes out in terms of their allocations with new allocation numbers, the federal CVP puts out their allocations. Invariably, agriculture, understandably, will look for water elsewhere. Usually that's underground. You see subsidence now in some parts of the state where literally we're pulling so much water out that the ground is subsiding, it's collapsing, infrastructure is being impacted. So the overdrafting of that precious water is occurring. And so we're mindful of that, and that's the purpose and the cause, of course, that we're advancing with SGMA. We're also doing this in the budget, and I hope you'll take a look at. We're putting money, resources, not just in the bond side of this, or what would otherwise be a bond, the $5.1 billion, but we have put aside an historic amount of money to support our agricultural industry, including supporting efforts to move forward with SGMA and to address some of the concerns that many of the smaller agricultural producers and operators have, that they'll even be able to survive another drought and the fallowing that may occur as a consequence of that. Other resources, grants, technical assistance, all part and parcel of the overall budget.
Hi, Governor. So obviously, as you've said, we have several water basins that are critically overdraft, and while we have that, we also have this competing demand for housing in California, and local governments are there's been bills that have crossed your desk that you've signed that incentivize affordable housing and so forth. And so we have these two competing demands of the need for water and the need for housing. How do you expect that challenge to be met through your office in the coming years? And I realize that might be an impossible question, but what can we do with those two competing demands?
I mean, while they may be competing, I don't see them as particularly challenging in the context of the aggregate, the totality in terms of water supply in the state of California. Remember that the vast majority of water consumption is natural as well as agricultural use, not residential use. The overwhelming percentage of total water consumption falls in that category, not in the residential space. Our ability to efficiently apply strategies to reduce water consumption in residential communities is well established here in the state of California. That per capita consumption, again, as I noted, is down substantially from 2013. As it relates to our strategies in terms of density bonuses, in terms of efforts to focus our housing around, strategies that address environmental concerns, not just the issues of water. I think California has been a leader in that space. We have a lot more work to do, but I don't see that necessarily as conflicting an issue as others. That said, there are large-scale developments in rural parts of the state where that becomes a dominant issue. But when I look at a state of 40 million, and I look at housing policy broadly, and I look at density bonuses around transit corridors, SB 375, and other strategies that we've established in the state of California, I think we can achieve our long-term goals as it relates to water and our long-term goals as it relates to housing production.
One more question. So you are asking for voluntary reductions of about 15%.
Correct.
How do you expect to measure that in terms of agricultural use when most of the agricultural wells don't have meters on them at all?
It's a challenge, but we have a system that hasn't been modernized. We're going to have investments that are unprecedented, as I noted, including that $5.1 billion that cuts across the spectrum. Big part of that will be around data. This is something I'm smiling, and I'm sure Wade is as well. I can't tell you how many conversations we've had in the last 6 months specifically to your question. What this state simply does not know is jaw-dropping as it relates to that question. And the fact that over decades we haven't sought to get those answers is curious and questionable. Self-evidently has to be addressed. We are beginning the process of more comprehensively addressing it, putting resources into that space. But we do have a requirement pursuant to the executive order that I just signed that has a monthly data report that must come out from the State Water Board. That data will include industrial, residential, and the extent we can quantify with available resources the agricultural use. That will also be included in those monthly reports.
In regards to the drought and the years of drought that we've had here in California, are there any long-term plans about maybe creating more basins or more ability to keep and save water?
Unequivocally. And the question is, we have an all-the-above strategy in terms of our commitment, in terms of the work that we've done, not only the current work and the contemporary budget that we're putting forth as it relates to issues of conveyance, as it relates to canals, as it relates to storage above and below ground storage, conjunctive use, water recycling, groundwater replenishment, stormwater capture. Across the spectrum, we have put out a suite of strategies. In fact, that suite of strategies can be found in a document we put out a year or so ago. We put out a water portfolio action plan. It has 100 specific items. As you may know, we also passed a bond a number of years ago, and we are prioritizing the first above-ground storage facility in California in decades up and around Colusa County. It's an off-stream storage facility that has been partially funded through the proceeds of the last bond that included roughly $2.5 to $2.7 billion for such projects, large-scale storage projects. So across the spectrum, including brackish desal, more traditional offshore desal, this state is looking to advance our efforts with commitments we have not made in decades and resources that have not been available for decades.
One more question from me. I realized during your statements, I never heard whether this drought, these heat waves that we're experiencing are due to climate change. Are they due to climate change?
Well, you'll find few people more clear in terms of their conviction that the hots are getting a lot hotter, the dries are getting a lot drier, and climate change is real and it's here. And if you don't believe it, because you don't believe science, you got to believe your own eyes. These climate-induced impacts, not only as it relates to reservoirs, and by the way, we're at a reservoir at 34%, Folsom's at 35%, 40. I think even Shasta's down below 50% at 47%. And this is jaw-dropping. What's happening in the west coast of the United States, the heat dome that we occurred in the Pacific Northwest, happened up in Canada, 119-degree temperatures up in Oregon, Washington. World record-breaking temperature here in the state of California, 130 degrees, Death Valley last August, projecting 128 this weekend. Those are the effects of climate change. It's here, it's real, it's human-induced, and it's happening. The impacts, the acute impacts are happening decades before even the scientists had predicted. I just have no patience for science deniers in terms of climate science. None, period, full stop, none. I think in the state of California, we have moved beyond the debate, and we're working on the application to address and mitigate the impacts, become more resilient, and dare I say, future-proof California. With that, I will move on. You won't have to watch the hair flipping in the air any longer, and look forward to talking to my staff about all that a little later. But I'm grateful y'all took the time to be out here. Supervisor, always great to see you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your hard work. And I appreciate that you are moving forward with your county efforts next week, and this indeed is timely. To those that asked a question rhetorically or maybe watching at home, what about the other 8 counties? We've said this, we've been crystal clear in August, or rather in April and May, and I'll be clear again today. This is targeted. We are looking at hydrology. That's guiding the determination, decision-making as rich counties that will be brought under this proclamation of a state of emergency, though 50 now are in that state of emergency. I imagine it is a question now of time whether those others will more quickly or soon enter into the fold as well. With that, grateful for the opportunity to highlight today's announcement. Thank you.